You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 416. My name is Brando. Coming up in just a moment, we'll be talking to creator, frontman of whatever you want to refer, musician, just cartoon genius, I think is fair to say, from Metalocalypse, DETHKLOK. Brendon Small, creator, so the great animated band DETHKLOK from Metalocalypse. They'll be doing a tour, a new album. I do want to give you a heads up, though, because as I'm putting this interview out, I did it like a week and a half ago. I'm so behind on my editing, so if we make any references to anything coming out, letting you know it's out now. Metalocalypse, Army of the Doomstar. The movie is out now, and the album DETHKLOK IV is out now. So we'll talk to him about that, and of course Guns N' Roses. And then on the flip side of that, we'll talk about perhaps, and some of the fan reviews that I'm behind on. But without further ado, let's talk to, from DETHKLOK, Metalocalypse, Brendon Small. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Brendon Small. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Anyone ever call you Brendo?
Yes, I think so. I think sometimes they'll drop off my last consonant and call me Brendo. Yeah, I think so. Not often, though. Not often.
It's funny you say that, because that's all it is because my name is Brandon. And no big surprise, it's just dropping off the last letter. But people in radio come up with all these crazy names like Laser or, Roach, but Brando. So I was curious if there was a Brendo. Anyway, on that note, is that how
I'll get Brandon all the time is what I'll get. And but the longer I'm in this industry, the less I get Brandon, the more I get my actual name. I'm blown away by how many people have spelled my name correctly.
Well,
I have a bunch of things that are hard to spell: Metalocalypse, Death, all that stuff.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, you must be used to that with DETHKLOK and Metalocalypse. So, you must, and I appreciate this time today because you're coming out with an album, you're coming out with a movie and tour. How do you even balance all of that? Was that all supposed to happen this year, or did it all fall into place?
No, it was a deliberate decision, which means you've got to start rewinding to 3 years ago, which is where we started this whole thing. So 3 years ago or so, we knew we were going to do this. We knew that we were going to put out a record and a movie and a soundtrack album, and then go on tour within the same week. So that's so the question is, how do you start it all? And
right.
And it all starts with me demoing music while I'm writing the movie. So I'm kind of doing two things at once, which is kind of nice, because if you've ever written, it's not always a fun process. It's always like, what do I do next? There's a blank page. And then you can pivot and start playing your guitar and say, I'm still working. I'm not avoiding that work. I'm actually, and then you hit a wall there and you go, okay. And you keep shape shifting and keep moving around. And eventually, it's almost like, I think like a restaurant, where some dishes take a little
bit. Yeah. Sorry, you froze. You froze with your hand in the air. Let me see if you come back.
If you can hear me.
Oh yeah, you came back. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's same thing as kind of your bandwidth. It's doing a lot right now, so you're doing.
Absolutely. So it's like once you say yes and you start engaging the production to spend money, that's where things start getting scary. That's where you've got it's a ticking time bomb, and you have to complete this before a certain date. And you also have to be you have to get it to a place where you've iterated and you've gotten it to where you want it to be. So all that stuff is part of the job.
But
So
what about as a creative? Because and let me just say, and of course, it's all going to be in the bio and summary of the episode. But Metalocalypse, the Army of Doomstar, the movie that's coming out, and the new album, Dethalbum IV. Where are you creatively? Like, because these are characters that you're. It's not Brendon, fronting the band. So how do you attack it with the storyline, with the lyrics? How do you approach it as a creative person?
well, there are a lot of different approaches. One is when I'm DETHKLOK, I'm thinking DETHKLOK is telling me what to do. I got nothing to do with it. I mean, I'm like a jerk who, plays the guitar and does what Squiscar tells me what to do. And then when I do the vocals, I'm doing what Nathan's telling me to do. So it's like deep character stuff. When I'm performing those characters in the movie, they're taking over. I do the dialogue, but they'll surprise me with improv. I've set them up well enough at this point where they take over. And then when you're the script writer, you're the director, you're more like an angry god who takes these characters and throws them against the wall and throws them into ceiling fans and throws them into a tree and sets them on fire and sees if they can escape. So the director and the writer are angry gods, and then the actor and the musician is deep character. I feel like I'm Serpico. I'm just like hanging out amongst these lunatics, trying to listen to them and trying to let them tell me what this project is.
All those years ago, could you imagine? Because I know you've been in bands, you've done stand-up comedy, and I remember I think I was in college when Metalocalypse came on Adult Swim, and it was such a big deal for all us, metal stoners. I mean, it was such a cool and different show, and if I ever get to mention it, I mean, thank you for Home Movies. I mean, that was an OG Adult Swim show. But it was such a big deal when DETHKLOK became real and became a band. Can you talk about maybe the beginning of what you wanted Metalocalypse to be, and then what it's become? Did you foresee that? Was that also the plan? Did you foresee, okay, I'm going to have this animated series with an animated band, but this is going to become like the Gorillas, I've heard you say, like kind of like that kind of show?
Yeah. I mean, it really was. It's really easy to sit at a table outside in Starbucks with like Tommy and the co-creator, and we would just go like this very simple kind of like 7-minute whimsy would be like, if we make a show and I write a song every episode, at the end of the season we could potentially put out a record. But if you put out a record, you'd have to tour it. So how do you tour an animated band? Then I looked at people like the Gorillas, and you see, oh, they did it. Okay, right, because we're not the band. We make the sound of the band, and the band doesn't exist. The band is a figment of my imagination. But what if we had this gigantic screen behind us, and how would you time that? You'd probably have a click track on one side if it's a stereo track, and then you'd have like whatever, like keyboards or dialogue on the other side, and the drummer would have to do this. And so it was really like that simple. And then I just followed that same logic and I said, hey, what if we put out a record? And Adult Swim was thinking the same thing. They're like, what if we put out a record? I said, yes. We're thinking the same thing. And what if we did a tour? This is how we do it. And we'd have to produce this. We need we need production money. We need to be able to do this. We need to be able to have venues that can support this. So it was that whole idea. So basically, then I started thinking about who would play with me. And then I discovered, the Gene Hoglan was available. And, and what I found out of him was, a really great long-term collaborator and great partner, and just someone who can take ideas that I have and make them cooler, make them better, and play them with just amazing, ferocious power and intensity. And so I was asking for all this stuff, but I didn't know if it was ever going to work, or if it was going to come to fruition. But ultimately, it was really seriously like me thinking for about as long as I talked just now. And that's how I came to the conclusion. And I was just like, yeah, if you did this and you did that, then you could do this. And then you'd have to get a bus driver, and you have to get a bus, and then I'll let tour managers kind of figure out that and map that out, and then see if we can. And then we did a tour, like an early tour, and we kind of figured out what worked, what didn't work, why it didn't work rather. And then also we're just like, hey, we should go out with metal bands. And because I think they paired us with and you'll know us by the Trail of the Dead, which is very cool band, but just not the same genre. And so so what we would have are like our shows getting popular, so it would get big crowds for us, and then this band, who was a great band on their own, was kind of getting neglected because it wasn't the same genre, and they were playing this very interesting indie rock stuff that wasn't the same. You don't mosh to it basically, and you don't have the same kind of intensity. So so we were like, okay. And then we went out with Soylent Green and Chimera, and that was an awesome tour. And we were like, okay, here we go. Then we go out with Mastodon, then we go out with Machine Head and Black Dahlia Murder and all those guys. So it was all just like, this seems to make sense. So, and we're going out again for this whole crazy thing
with Baby Metal.
With Baby Metal.
Yeah.
It's gonna be nuts.
That is cool. And 2 shows. I mean, that's a great tour. I mean, I gotta say this, and hopefully, because at some point I gotta start bringing my young son to shows.
Yeah.
He's gonna be, was he 16 weeks now? He's
my
too young.
God.
I wanted him to bring him to Metallica, too young, and Guns N' Roses, it's too young. So in the future, definitely want to take him to a Deathklok show and just have that experience. But he had a brief one this morning. He's sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now, while I'm kind of doing prep for this interview. He's being fussy. I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me put on some music to distract him. And I put on your album, the most recent album, and it totally calmed him down. Dethalbum IV.
Nuts.
Yeah,
Nuts.
From the Gardener of Vengeance to Aortic Desecration. And my wife is like, okay, is this good that this is working, that he's calm right now? I just wanted to mention that to you.
I've heard people play like Thunder Horse for their babies and the family, and like I've heard that before. But music does crazy things for kids. I don't know if there was a lot of music played for me when I was a kid, but my parents definitely played music when I was around, when I was growing up, and all that music would end up being really influential. And like they would play Andrew Lloyd Webber, like Jesus Christ Superstar, and they would play Evita, and that music is so powerful on those records. And then I'd watch like Tommy on cable or something like that from The Who and Ken Russell, and I would and eventually, like, I realized that I love music, and I love storytelling with music, and that all that stuff way back then is definitely still fresh in my brain now, all these years later, and I'm still using it creatively. So I don't know. I think it's important that just hearing things is such an important, just hearing music, and the moodiness of music is really exciting and interesting, and trying to understand it is really cool in your kid.
And to watch his eyes, watching the video and the cartoon, because it's at this age. I mean, I still love cartoons, so it's a better excuse for me to watch cartoons at almost 40 now that having a kid now, so it's okay that I can go back, watch whatever. But that lends me to ask this, as somebody who has an animated persona, what is that like for you? Is there a duality issue perhaps, and being like, while you're the front man and you're out there, like if you see your live shows, and I've only watched on YouTube, you're kind of in the dark, the screen is there. But that's like a show. That's great. That means you could tour endlessly for the rest of your life and never age if you wanted to. And nobody would see. But so what is that something that you like having this Peter Steele-esque persona?
This is like, I don't think that's my persona at all. I don't think any of those characters are my persona. I make the sounds for them, but they are their own thing. So what I try to do is both make the sounds live and kind of try to stay out of the way at the same time, because it's not about me. So like anytime someone, look, we did a big interview with Revolver, and my main thing was, can you get my picture out of this thing? Can you take all these pictures and get out of there? Because it's not about me, it's about the audience and their relationship with these characters. You know what I mean? And the fact is, like, I'm doing live kind of like recreation of what the record is, and so we never even, our joke, when me and the band and Gene and everybody, we joke that we're not DETHKLOK, we're the Metalocalypse players. What we're meant to do is sound like DETHKLOK and make the, get all the guitar harmonies, do it all live, do all these crazy acrobatic feats, of guitar mastery, or drum mastery rather, and try to just put on the ultimate show, because the show to me is meant to be more of like a theme park ride. If you've ever been to like Universal Studios or something like that, it's meant to feel like the Terminator 2 ride where bad
Yes.
guys come and talk to you and you're like, boo, and then the good guy comes, yay. And it should be like a really fun, crazy thing that feels like it's just, we press play, we're playing all the music live in person. And it should just feel like you're flipping through a comic book with double kicks, just driving you from song to song. And that's the feeling. I want it to feel like a ride, because I go to a lot of shows, and every time I go to a show, I always ask myself, did I get the most out of this experience, and what would I have done differently? So when I watch a show, when I go see like Mr. Bungle or King Diamond or Iron Maiden, I look at the band, and then I'm looking at the audience, and I'm looking at the band, and I'm looking at the audience, and I'm looking at the pit, and I'm looking at the band, and I'm looking at the stage show and the lights, and I'm thinking, okay, can I afford this? Can I do that? Those guys way up there, are they getting the same show as these guys? If I can do that, then we've got something. And that's why Baby Metal's part of this tour too, because they're theatrical on stage.
Yeah.
And I just want to really make this fun. We've been stuck in our houses for how long? Stuck with this pandemic. Let's go out and have some fun. And this show's going to be fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'll flip to the movie, because the movie looks fun, and you got a pretty great cast.
Yeah.
You got Mark Hamill is in there. You got King Diamond, Kirk Hammett. Can you tell us how that kind of came together and how you got some of these big names involved?
Well, Mark Hamill is and Malcolm McDowell and Victor Brands. They're all kind of, they've been from the show on the Mark Hamill's in every single episode of Metalocalypse. He's in and so there was a strange time where it wasn't a strange time. It was a time where he had kind of completed being Luke Skywalker, and now he was this voiceover actor, and he was also doing live action stuff, but he was available, and I really, really am so thankful that he participated in this project and came back for this movie. And same with all the actors who participated in the show and came back for the movie. They're such great actors. They bring with them so much gravitas and so much important kind of movie history. That's Luke Skywalker's Star Wars, and particularly The Empire Strikes Back, is one of the most beautiful, gorgeous dreams that I've ever seen that made its way into a movie theater. Clockwork Orange is a wonderful, gorgeous nightmare. It's one of the most beautiful things in the world. So that, and then plus Metallica, plus Kirk Hammett, plus Scott Ian and King Diamond. These are all great musical storytellers, all in the same place. And it's a way to just kind of say, like, I love all of these people a lot, and that's what made me, and that's why they're here. But they're also great at acting and great at entertaining and doing all that stuff. So I'm just lucky to have them all there.
I know usually when people doing voiceovers for cartoons or animated series, they're not always together. But I'm just out of curiosity, did you watch somebody who, like Mark Hamill, who was the Joker, the Batman animated series, or John Hamm? Did you watch? Is that something that you want to do, or you just let them be?
It was different for every single one. So some of them I did on Zoom. Some of them have their own, like Mark Hamill had his own home studio, but I've recorded with him in person before. But and Malcolm McDowell was also on Zoom. He was like somewhere in the world. John Hamm was in the same room with I think I was on Zoom, but he was like in another room. I don't even remember anymore. Some actors were in the same room, and I was like on one side of the booth and they were on the other side. Particularly now, it's isolated recording was kind of like par for the course, because we were doing some of the stuff in the pandemic or just after it. And but it's always nicer to be in the same room and to kind of be in the same place. Like in home movies, for example, that was all really, it was so important that we were all in the same room. Myself and John Benjamin and Melissa Galsky, always improvising behind partitions where we had like a little kind of portal where we could see each other, kind of check in with each other and listen to each other and just behave around each other while we were still in these characters. So it's always nice when you can, but when you can't, you just try to make it work as well as you can. And when you have pros, it's easier.
Sweet. And I gotta ask, because obviously you see all the GNR stuff in the back, Appetite for Distortion. It's a Guns N' Roses themed podcast.
Sure.
I use that 6 degrees of GNR bacon, as I call it. And it's so funny. The rep that reached out to me when I saw that you were, I get the press release,
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I would love to interview Brendon. He's like,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, what's the connection? GNR connection. I'm like, well, have you ever seen this episode of Metalocalypse with this band Snakes and Barrels, and apostrophe?
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I mean, yeah, that seems to be the obvious play of Guns N' Roses, but any more influences in Metalocalypse from Guns N' Roses? And do you
Well,
personally have a GNR story?
well, Slash has been on the show.
There you
So
go.
Slash has done voices on the show, and he's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. That was one of the first when I was like, you know, learning about heavy metal isn't it all happens at an important age, or it did for me at least. When I was like 13, 14, I remember I made like a decision. I saved my money, and on one day I bought 2 records, and I had planned this out, and I'd saved my money, and I had it with me. I had to like get it into my pocket and make sure I'm counting it out and make sure I had enough. And I went to the record store and I bought 2 records. One was Def Leppard's Hysteria, which was one of my favorite records and still is. And the other one is Appetite for Destruction. And I just like, it's almost like I broke out of this world and started like floating around in this kind of astral plane of gorgeous music and guitar playing and aggression and all this power and darkness and all this really cool stuff. So Appetite for Destruction is like one of the records where I'll just go on a long walk, twice a year and just go top to bottom, back and forth, and listen to every little overdub between Izzy and Slash. And I mean, it's just one of the greatest bands that's ever existed. So I love Guns N' Roses. I love Axl. I love everybody. So there's definitely, like, we thought that Pickles was kind of almost like a Dave Grohl, where he had maybe been in Nirvana at some point, but then joined DETHKLOK. And so we always thought Pickles, the drummer, was in some kind of something between, like, a Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith-ish kind of rock band, of that kind of genre. And so it got me, like, so there are like songs where I would get a talk box and play, guitar with, like, where Slash would do something like that,
Mm-hmm.
And so I would try to like do some kind of things in the style. And then one of the coolest days was Slash was working on an animated project. This is years ago, at the same company, and he was there and I was there. And then a big box of pedals came from MXR Dunlop, a bunch of wah pedals and distortion pedals. And Slash was there when that box came in, and together we kind of like opened up this box and went through all these pedals. And he's like, that's a cool one. I have this. And then I had this one phaser pedal that was on like a wah chassis like this. By the way, this is Slash's wah pedal right here. I just happened to have. I use this on the record, by the way.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So this is like his the Slash wah. It's got like a little distortion thing you can kick in, a little booster thing, and
It says his name right on it.
And it says his name right on it. It says Crybaby. It says it right there too, Slash. So
Slash
I
wah.
remember. So yeah, so anyway, we went through all these pedals, and there I was talking to him, and anytime I saw him afterwards, he's Slash. He's the coolest guy in the world, and just a monster guitar player. I mean, I've seen him live, and boy, does he bring it every single time.
Is that who? And I have some questions for you before we wrap up in a couple minutes. My buddy Matt Barry, he wanted me to mention home movies, but specifically Dwayne. Is that modeled off of Slash?
It's Dwayne was kind of like, he to us was like that quintessential kind of heavy metal kid with, like, he grew his hair out, he kind of speaks in 1-word syllables, and has those big tennis shoes with the tongues kind of hanging out, those high tops and stuff. And it wasn't necessarily Slash, but I think it's all in there. And I didn't really have too much with to do with characters back then, because I was just this kid who was writing it. And but that was like, I saw Dwayne and I was like, yeah, that's the idea. That's what he should be. And I mean, all of that's, like it or not, Slash is in my DNA, and Guns N' Roses is inside, like, deep. And I'm such a huge fan of their stuff. So it's hard for it to not sneak in.
Sure. I love that. This question is from Dustin. Please ask him if or when they're going to release the studio version of Water Horsey Blues, aka the Snakes and Barrels song.
That is a crazy song with I remember recording that, and that's the one where I used the talk box for it. And the only thing, I wish I had like the time and the resources to do all these offshoot bands and do like a record for Dr. Roxo and Snakes and Barrels and Toki's like whimsical, dream songs that are like ELO meets, Queen or whatever, who knows. But I That's always nice to hear that people remember that stuff. But there's no plan as of yet. Maybe
Okay.
maybe that'll change. Who knows?
Well, how about these plans? This is from Matt. He would love to know if there are any plans for releasing a complete Metalocalypse soundtrack with the songs that didn't make the DETHKLOK albums.
Yeah, that'd be the same thing. I mean, here's
Same
what
thing?
I would do like, for every song, for every episode, the challenge was at the stop. And this, nobody asked me to do this. And nobody even asked for this show. Nobody asked for anything. But but the challenge that I wanted to give myself was, can I write a new piece of music every week? In addition to like the score and like the mood and all the mood enhancing stuff. But a song, which is what, like a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and maybe go into a guitar solo, and maybe I can crunch it down to 35 seconds, 45 seconds, sometimes a minute, sometimes 2 minutes. And then that would always be the give and take. What do we pull from the narrative to make room for the music? And we would always be kind of like measuring that out, because you always have to come to a specific time to land the bird, at the very end, and deliver it to the network. So some of these songs would just stay in their current form forever, like 45 seconds, 35 seconds, 22 seconds. And some of them would graduate and become, go to college and show up on the record. And usually it was audience reaction, like what did the audience really pick up? Because I'm making the episode and we're watching the audience watch the show, and we're seeing what's landing. And so I go, yeah, definitely this is going in the record. This is going in. This one, no one really talked about this one. And then also, if I'm really excited by something, if I really want to take something to the finish line, then I'll push for it too.
Okay. Like, as you mentioned, I think it's cool that people remember these things. And I mean, come on, guys. He has 3 projects going on alone today. I mean, he has enough on his plate. So the big date is August 22nd, right? That's when the movie will be available on streaming and the record comes out.
And the record comes out, but it's not just one record, it's 2 records. And the way I look at this whole project is, we've got a soundtrack album, which is, to me, really, it's such an important storytelling part of the movie. So when you watch the movie, you're going to be hearing lots of score and synthesizer and orchestra. We actually got an orchestra to play with us, the Budapest Orchestra, in the score department. And so I think the movie, the narrative, the characters is one thing. The Death album is the brutality and the mystical, and the score is the emotional center of the movie. And they all go together. So if you're going to get one, I think you should get them all, because you got to check it out, because they really all do something completely different, but they're all coming from the same kind of central DNA kind of like brain.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. This is just very, again, it's a creative person's dream, I think, what you're being able to do, and to have the support and the fan base over these years that allows, because it doesn't always happen to have these things fulfilled, and you're doing it. You're living the dream, Brendon.
You're totally right. It's really fun to be creative on your own and make music for yourself just to listen to. But the fact that this came together in the way that it did is because there's a fan base out there, and without them, there wouldn't be none of this would have happened. So thanks for everyone for being vocal over the years, and here it is. I'm excited for everyone to check it out and to take it all in.
Awesome. This was a lot of fun, and I hope we get to do this again.
Absolutely. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
He was a really cool guy. That was a lot of fun. You could tell that he enjoyed talking about Guns N' Roses. Not all guests, where I have to use that 6 degrees of GNR bacon to get to interview them, and you don't know how tight their affiliation is with the band and their appreciation is, but you could tell that he enjoyed talking about some GNR and his relationship with Slash, and talking about Appetite for Destruction. And I apologize again. I wish I pride myself on getting these episodes out quick. I usually get this in response from labels and managers, like, whoa, you turned this around really, really quick. I know it's a podcast, and that's not necessarily what you need to do. It's pre-recorded, of course, but I like to feel like I just did this interview. I want you to experience it as close as I can get to you being here live with me. It's just been difficult with a 4-month-old baby Brownstone. Yeah, I get to include him in some episodes, but there are times he needs, some one-on-one, daddy time. I gotta take care of him, and he takes use of all your limbs, like you have no arms free, you're just holding him, and bouncing him up and down and feeding him and all this stuff. And all we that are parents, you know the deal. So I would have loved to have done some more reviews in the past week or so. And it's certainly no shortage of submissions. So before I forget, I want to give a couple of thank yous. This one, Pittsburgh, that's the place to be this year, where we got Perhaps. I thought, as we discussed last episode with Lauren Schaffner of Loudwire, we both were at the show in New Jersey. We thought maybe we would get it there because we heard rumors that I guess this is the only time I believe when a song is coming, when the fans are outside taping the sound check. Okay, I can hear it. The band is acknowledging in some way that this thing exists. So when I heard that they had rehearsed Perhaps twice, I thought I was getting it. Did not. Happy for my friends, you bad apples that got it. So let me give a shout out to Nate Allison, him and his dad. You may remember a couple years ago, he was and his dad did the show review for Hershey, Pennsylvania. I was also at that show as well, the first of that tour leg. And it was his first Guns N' Roses concert ever. So I think it was his first concert ever. And his second concert ever gets to hear Perhaps live in Pittsburgh. Nate, thank you. And your dad, they submitted, they wanted to come back on, but just haven't had the time. And now, as I'm putting this episode out, it's old news. It's old news, and I always say the conversation continues in between the broadcasts. So we've been talking about the live debut of Perhaps for quite some time. So I just wanted to acknowledge, thank you for your submissions, for wanting to do it, but just haven't had the time. And same thing with Boston at the show at Fenway Park, where it rained. It just rained. My buddy Matty B, who sent me a video of Perhaps, told me it started raining during Slither, that it was fun, but a lot of people got wet. And so let me just give a shout out to Brian, who wanted to do a Fenway review, but in addition to me being tired and having no time, he's like, the show kicked him in the butt. He's like, it was a lot of fun, but yeah, he's like, we got absolutely soaked at Fenway, so I just needed to crash. And I get it. It takes a lot of energy to do these. It does. You just think it's just talking about Guns N' Roses, but you got to talk about passion, with passion. So it does, and I completely understand. So hopefully in the future, Brian, we can get you on to do a fan review or whatever. I love incorporating you guys and gals in this podcast, which leads me to, instead of just giving a shout out, let's do it under the guise of a segment I haven't done in a while, and a soundbite I haven't played in a while, and that is Mr. Mailstone.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
So as I mentioned, I love involving you in this podcast. I would not have been 400 episodes deep without you. And it's not just because of listenership. It's your involvement. It's helping me ask the right questions. It's just your support. It's just being involved in being a co-host. It's being involved in doing reviews, in the fan reviews that I've done, just talking about your Guns N' Roses fandom. So I always encourage that. So that in mind, I got an email from Adam Kale. Good morning. How professional you started. I recently stumbled upon your podcast by way of your Sean Bevan interviews, and subsequently many more, and I am now a huge fan. It is great to see someone with a real appreciation for Chinese democracy. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was alone. Nope. You are not alone. Not at all. Since you often speak with people outside the guns camp about their appreciation for guns, I thought, and I'm sure you're not looking for suggestions, but I gambled that this one might be considered, or might not have been on anyone's radar. You might consider speaking with Aaron North. I don't think I've gotten that suggestion before. North is the former guitarist for the infamous, and I preface this with, I don't know who this is, Icarus Line. It's a band I'm not familiar with. What I am familiar with is that he's the guitarist that replaced Robin Fink when Fink left Nine Inch Nails for Guns N' Roses. North is a huge Guns N' Roses fan, he writes, and is bursting with tons of Guns N' Roses lore. He grew up in LA and is an unbelievable encyclopedia of rock and roll knowledge. He's also funny and an incredible guitar player and performer himself. Are you a PR guy, Adam? I'm just kidding. Sorry to toss an uninvited suggestion your way, but I'm a huge fan of the show, and I think North would be an awesome and rewarding interview. Adam, thank you for reaching out and all the kind words. But yeah, you're a new listener because I say it all the time. Please, even when I'm not directly soliciting for guests, please, I no issue with that. You are all my producers. That's how I look at this. I'm a one-man band, but I need your help. And I thought this was pretty cool that Adam continued. He wrote Buckethead a letter when he was 13, and he wrote back to me as his puppet. He thinks the letter is in a binder somewhere. You need to find that shit, man. That's quite incredible. And also, you said something really where I'm trying to find it. A couple back and forths I had with this guy. Oh, he is a music composition. He's a music composition doctoral student. See, I can't even say it. You're so much smarter than me. And he gave a composition talk 2 semesters back on Bucket and Bumblefoot's playing styles on Chinese democracy. Just to show how serious he is. That's pretty friggin' serious, man. Oh, this is the Guns N' Roses fans. These are the Guns N' Roses fans we need to find. See, I haven't found all of you bad apples out there, so plenty of you who are diehard Gunners, the guy's doing like complete compositions. He's a doctoral student about Chinese democracy. And yeah, man, we gotta, I don't know, if it works out. I sent him a DM, Aaron North, on Instagram. So maybe if it works out, maybe you'll be a co-host. We'll see. But I do want to mention, because it's been a bit, because I haven't been able to do the reviews, just been too busy. And if I could do a review for every Guns N' Roses concert, I would do it. What could help, maybe, is if you help me pay for a babysitter. You can send stars on Facebook videos, super thanks on YouTube videos. You can hit up my Patreon, which is on, there's a link to top of my most of my social media pages have the link tree link, and my Patreon is up there, so you can help me pay for a babysitter, and I could do more episodes. So that's a pretty good deal, right? I'm not asking for much. But I want to mention, because perhaps it's now available and everywhere, the music video I think is cool. Yeah, it's not November Rain, it's not Estranged, it's not this giant production, but it's a lot of just great tour footage of just this Guns N' Roses band, this current version, just having a ton of fun. You're seeing everyone from management to the road crew to every single member of GNR, not just the big three, and it's well put together. So it is cool. It's already hit over 2 million views on YouTube. So awesome to have a Guns N' Roses new song, new video. And look, we were never meant to hear the leaks. This should have been the first time we're hearing, perhaps. Maybe the only butt fumble should have been the Touch Tunes fiasco. But people comparing the demos. Look, this is a look through, going back in time, what Chinese democracy would have sounded like with Slash and Duff instead of Bucket and Tommy, which is what some people wanted. So now we're getting songs written during that era with a more classic sounding Guns N' Roses, which is what people complained about at that time. Now people are complaining about it. Oh, we want all new. We want Izzy back. Just appreciate what they're doing, man. I'm in that boat. More Axl Rose. And yeah, I understand some, if not all, the vocals on these songs were recorded a long time ago. That doesn't bother me either, because I just don't think this is the end. This is the tip of the iceberg. Just like with the touring, they kind of dipping their toe in with stuff. And I believe when this tour leg comes to an end, this recent U.S. run, Slash is going to do his blues stuff, his mild stuff. Duff's going to do his solo stuff. And Axl is going to be tinkering. And also, who's to say that Axl went to Slash and Duff and is like, oh, we're doing these Chinese democracy songs? Who's to say Slash or Duff didn't go to Axl and go, let's finish what we started. Let's patch some holes here in our history. And then let's go back and write all new stuff with the people who we are now. I'm completely making this up, but who's to say that didn't happen? Who's to say Axl's a dictator still doing all these things? I just don't see it going down the way a lot of fans think it goes down. We just don't know. And I'm happy that they're touring. I'm happy that there have been no issues. We're way past that. This was like, are they ever going to get back together, Axl and Slash? Are they going to break up? How long this is going to last? Oh, they're never going to do anything. Then we get silkworms in the version of absurd. So whenever we say that they can do something, something happens. But yes, it would be nice if Izzy's never coming back, Steven's never coming back, but more involvement, more inclusion. Yes, I get that. That would be great. If they come out with a new album, would it be even more amazing if they did some guest spots on the album? Yes, fantastic. But I think anything less than that is an insult to Richard and to Frank and their tenure and their work. I have no desire to do that. Frank, I don't know the difference between drumming styles. I'm not a musician. I love his personality. I love who he is. To me, he fits. He's great for Guns N' Roses. That's how I look at it. And Richard, I mean, he's been with the band for so long. You know, it's funny. My buddy Matty B, who I said was at Fenway, he sat way up, but still, there's no excuse, Matty. He thought Richard was Izzy, and he thought he missed the news that Izzy came back. There are some fans that if you're on the peripheral, you just don't know. Yeah, I mean, they kind of look alike, and that's a little awkward, but they're different people, and Richard has earned his place in the band, and as somebody who's never seen the Appetite 5 or Izzy play live, I would love to see it, but not on a full-time basis. That's just, unless Richard quits, and then that's the only thing I could think of, unless it's like an equal, you know, where the DJ said he quit to make room for Slash. If it's kind of amicable, I that's something I can get behind. But otherwise, you know, I support this current version of the band, and looking forward to look at the Sneaky Sneaks, what they did when Perhaps came out, and what we can get, the physical copies of Perhaps, where the other side of it has the General. What? This isn't a fan-made artwork, which we're seeing going around with Atlas Shrugged. You hear rumors on Reddit and 4chan or about Atlas Shrugged. I don't give any of that any credence whatsoever, even if it turns out to be right. Until Axl says something or something related to, like I said before, unless I hear them sound checking it, or I happen to know somebody in the know, which usually is, like I found out about Perhaps a little bit before the rest of everybody because I was in radio, because I am in radio, but it's just funny to me, where the only time we really heard about it was Brain on this podcast saying where they got the name from. General Tso's chicken. Chinese food. I doubt the song is going to be about Chinese food. So it's going to be really interesting to see, or better yet, hear what has become of the General when it finally comes out. And my guess, only a guess, is that it will be streaming before we wait for the physical copy. Or who knows, maybe that'll boost up sales for the physical copies of Perhaps the only way to hear the General. Until it gets leaked online. I really am just trying not to do that anymore. I don't want to hear any leaks, any demos, because it changes your first impression of the artist's final presentation, and that's just not the way it was meant to be heard. Okay, I hear you. Well, we don't know if we're going to get music. It was never going to come out. Well, this is just a topic of conversation that we've had and will continue to have as Guns N' Roses fans. And I wouldn't have it any other way. So what is to come on the podcast? Well, I do want to get to more reviews. Certainly, even though I'm behind and I've been busy, it is not a discouragement for submitting. Please keep doing so. Facebook, X, Twitter, Instagram, email, theafdshow@gmail.com. Upcoming shows, please just let me know. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I will do my best because I love meeting and talking to you. about this band and just seeing you're just meeting crazies just like you. I mean, my God. I think I'm the crazy one with the GNR podcast. Whenever I'm like go to a party, and like I went to a 40th birthday party, and I'm telling people about all I do about Guns N' Roses and all I talk about, I feel like such a nerd at a place like they don't give a shit. But then I get this guy like Adam emailing me saying that he's doing like compositions about Chinese democracy and writing letters as a kid to Buckethead. So there are plenty of you out there that are way nerdier than me, and I love it. I love it. So let's keep this podcast going. We're absolutely going to do that. So until the next episode, when are you going to see it? When are you going to hear it? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.